Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Comic Book Geezers. Welcome to another episode of the show. We've got a very special show here today. A first-time guest on the Geezers. He is a comic book geezer himself, but you've probably seen him on Sea of Tranquility if you follow us over there. Welcome to Scott Berry, first time on Comic Book Geezers. What's up, my friend? How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me, Pete. Doing great, man.
Yeah, Scott and I know each other a while. He's done various things over on the Sea of Tranquility, and in fact, I actually met Scott online as a fellow comic book collector. So I've long wanted to get him on the channel, and he converses with Wild Bill and myself quite a bit. And we had an opportunity this week where Bill and I haven't been able to get together to record some shows. So I asked Scott, I'm like, man, would you want to do some episodes? And the first thing that came to mind, because I've seen a lot of his collection online, is he is a big fan, as am I, of Savage Sword of Conan, Savage Tales of Conan, Conan the Barbarian in general. And I know he's got a lot of the magazines. So I figured this would be a great time for Scott to show off some of his collection. So this is a part one of a part two episode. So Scott's going to take you through and show off some of these wonderful covers of Sword and Savage Tales of Conan. So with that saying, I'll turn it over to Scott to get started on this one.
All right, Pete, thanks. So let's just dive in. First, a little background on me. I started reading comics when I was about 6 or 7. Started with things like Bugs Bunny, Donald Duck, that kind of thing. I'd get those little digest comics in my Christmas stocking. And then around the time I hit 8, I got my first superhero comic, Batman 255, Neil Adams cover. I was hooked. And a few months later, got my first Marvel book, Marvel Team Up number 24 with Spider-Man. And from there, I never looked back. I started getting Spider-Man, Batman, Avengers, Captain America, Justice League, you name it. All the big titles from DC and Marvel. And I didn't really start getting into Conan until I was about 12. I bought Conan the Barbarian, but I did not get Savage Sword back when I was a kid. A couple of reasons for that. It was a magazine, and it wasn't a spinner rack at 7-Eleven with the rest of the standard format comics. And then the other thing was the thing cost like 4 times as much as a regular comic.
Yeah, they're like $1. Weren't they like $1.50? I think when they debuted, something like that.
In the 70s, I'd say it ranged from about $1 to $1.50, whereas a standard format comic was like between 25 cents to 40 cents. And so if I bought one of those, that was like 3 or 4 standard format comics I couldn't get. So I didn't get it back then. Also it was a black and white book. And I guess back then, I didn't really get the whole black and white thing. Why are they doing it in black and white? The only comic magazine I bought back then as a kid that I can remember was that Kiss comic they did with their blood in the ink. Did you have that one?
I had both the first two. I at some point I sold the first one. I still have the second one. I wish I would have held on to that first one.
I've got the first one, but not the second one.
Okay, there you go. We complement each other. Yeah. I didn't purchase a lot of the black and white mags either. Although the only ones that I bought religiously, I bought all the Howard the Ducks from the newsstand when they came out. Okay. And I bought most of the Doc Savage ones and a couple of the Hulk ones. And, a couple of the, what's the Kung Fu, Master of Kung Fu, I forget what the name of that one is.
Deadly Hands of Kung Fu?
Deadly Hands, yeah. I had a few of those.
I've got a bunch of those, but not all.
Yeah, I have a couple that I didn't buy any of the Planet of the Apes at the time. I've bought a bunch of them since.
Yeah, I got
for whatever reason, I was a big Conan fan, but I just never bought any of the Savage Sword of Conans for whatever reason. I guess you can't buy them all because they were expensive for us kids who were saving up our.
I don't know about you, man, but I didn't get that big an allowance.
Yeah, I didn't get much either, right? So when I started buying comics, they were like 15, 20 cents. So
right,
if you get 50 cents a week or a buck every 2 weeks or whatever it was, you can only buy so many at a time. And
exactly
one of the magazines, and there's like 2 weeks worth of allowances right there. So you had to kind of
exactly. And Savage Tales and Savage Sword of Conan and all the other magazines Marvel's was doing, these were geared toward an older audience generally. Since they were magazines, they didn't have to go through the comics code, and they could kind of push the envelope a little bit more in terms of violence and sex and nudity and that kind of thing. Not that they really pushed the envelope that much. I mean, I think it just kind of they didn't get hassled by the comics code.
Yeah.
You got big ripped dudes swinging swords and battle axes around. So things are going to get messy pretty quick,
Oh, yeah.
So it would make sense that it would show a lot of, it seems like it should have showed more gore than it did, given the weaponry and, the time it's supposed to take place and everything.
Because even the color comic was fairly violent for what it was, right?
Yeah, I think the comics code had just lightened up a little bit right before Marvel bought the license to Conan the Barbarian. So a couple of years earlier, they couldn't have published it. And Conan also got a lot of action, and they could show a little more of that kind of thing in Savage Sword, where it was more like just barely implied in Conan the Barbarian. But again, it never got super graphic. And it was easily Marvel's most successful comic magazine, and ran for 235 issues, 1974 to 1995. I didn't start buying them until the early 2000s. I was beefing up my collection of Conan the Barbarian around that time and other Bronze Age titles. And I started hitting cons and comic stores, and that's when I started ordering online. And just speaking of which, I'd like to just give out a quick shout out to Austin Books and Comics. I get a lot of my comics there, and just want to say hi to Brad, Ty, Brandon, Jay, Lisa, and everybody else that works there. And then when I started getting these books, I planned to only get like maybe the first 5 Savage, those 5 Savage Tales, and maybe the first 10 Savage Sword issues. 10 became 20, 20 became...
Yeah, so much for that, right?
Yeah, the curse is real.
Yeah.
Right? And it's the 6th longest streak in my collection. Got them all. After Detective Comics, Hellblazer, Daredevil, Captain America, and Batman, it's number 6 as far as just length of the streak.
Yeah.
And it's a 2nd longest one I have that's a complete series after Hellblazer. So, and a lot of the original stories that Robert E. Howard wrote, the creator of Conan, were adapted for both Conan the Barbarian and Savage Sword of Conan and Savage Tales. And Roy Thomas was the guy that wrote most of the early stories. I think maybe up through 100, maybe. John Buscema, he drew most of the issues, and the inkers that come to mind, guys like Alfredo Alcala, Tony DeZuniga, Ernie Chan, who also worked on Conan the Barbarian. So yeah, it's just some great artwork. Let's dive into these covers, man. Let's take a look. So there it is, Savage Tales #1. And
that's a statement right there, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's holding up severed head. I mean, he's got the sword with blood on it, woman holding on to his leg there, and you got a little thing here telling you it's for mature readers.
Yeah, my dad would have been like, "You are not buying that."
Yeah, this, maybe this isn't for little Johnny,
No.
And there's #2. The first cover and the second cover were both painted covers by John Buscema. And Barry Smith, this was part 1 of the Red Nails story, and Barry Smith did the artwork on that, on the interior. #3.
Nice. Yeah, that's nice.
That's I think Pablo Marcos and John Romita, and you can kind of tell it's Romita.
Yeah, definitely.
It's got some Romita-isms.
Do you prefer Barry Smith's rendition or Big John's?
Oh man, that's like the age-old question, isn't it? I mean, everybody, I love them both. I mean,
both really different, but both really great in their own way.
Very different, but yeah, I mean, John Buscema, I mean, it's like, what couldn't that guy draw, Yeah. From what I hear, Conan was like his favorite thing to do.
Not surprising.
The superheroes, I mean, he was good at it, but I've heard of interviews with him, and he wasn't all that keen on superheroes. It was a paycheck to him, Hard to,
Yeah, I mean, it's
so
funny to
good.
hear him say that, because I think he was at his best on Conan and Thor, my personal opinion.
Yeah,
Well,
I
man,
think
was
I think he did
great
like
on
Thor
Fantastic
some. Yeah.
Four. I thought he did a great Fantastic
Yeah. I mean, what didn't he do? I mean,
Yeah.
he just about everything at Marvel at one time or another. And here we got number 4, a classic Neil Adams cover. Again, you know, going for the violence on this cover. That dude is about to lose his head.
Yep. And the scantily clad women are probably on every single one of them.
You got that too. Now, Conan and Khazar do not appear in a story together here. It's more of a passing of the torch. This is Conan's last issue, Savage Tales, and Khazar's first. He becomes the main feature in the book after Conan leaves. And he leaves because they give him his own book.
Give him his own. There you go.
Savage Sword, number 1.
Great cover. Yeah.
Red Sonja. And you've got a cover by Boris Vallejo, one of the best fantasy artists. The only one I'd maybe put above him is, I'd definitely put above him is Frazetta. And sadly, they never got Frazetta to do a cover.
Yeah, strangely enough. Yeah, just on the old paperbacks. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people say that's kind of what led to popularity of Conan in the 60s and 70s. You know, but a lot of those covers sold a lot of books.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then number 2, we got a great Neil Adams cover.
What a great story, Black Colossus.
Yeah, awesome.
And you know, one of the things I love so much about a lot of these interpretation and adaptation of the original Howard storylines is these are comics that have a lot of dialogue, because you have to.
That's true.
These stories are very involved. So even though there's a lot of, you know, violence and whatnot and action, you got to have all the dialogue, because the original stories are very wordy, and they always did a great job of adapting.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like literature, really.
Yeah.
The guy was a damn good writer and died at a very young age.
Yeah, yeah.
So here we got number 3. Pretty cool cover there. I'm not sure who did this one. Actually, I think it's Mike Kaluta, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that could be.
I think it's Kaluta. I looked a lot of these up before we started. And here we got another Boris Vallejo cover. He did a lot of the early covers.
Yeah. I mean, Boris's work is unmistakable.
Yeah.
Great artist.
And
that's one of my favorites. I love that cover. Yeah.
This was Boris Vallejo paints over John Buscema layouts.
That is truly spectacular. Yeah.
You can kind of see John's.
Yep, you can. You can.
Stamp on you know, that he does on Conan there.
Yep.
Number 6. I forgot who did this one.
Man, Scott, you make me want to go out and get some of these. This episode is not going to be good for me.
The curse is so real.
It's terrible. It's terrible. Yeah,
another Boris cover.
Yeah, look at that.
This one, and I think it's the only one he ever did, which is a shame. Frank Brunner.
I love Frank's work.
Yeah, one of those guys that just we didn't see enough work from, you know. But what he did was awesome.
Yeah, I think Kirk and I were talking about that on a recent episode here. We were talking about there's a handful of guys that were so amazing, that had similar styles. Frank's one of them. Mike Palug is another one. Steranko and the guy who did Master of Kung Fu briefly. I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Paul Galassi.
Paul Galassi. You know, these guys who did a lot of the great kind of horror fantasy, but also kind of that spy espionage stuff really, really well. But they worked so briefly with Marvel. It's like they had their work is outstanding, but none of them did long runs on anything or stuck around for a long time.
Yeah, that's a shame too.
Yeah, Frank Brunner, great. I mean, great. He did some great stuff, briefly with Doctor Strange and Howard the Duck and Man Thing, and that's a great cover. Yeah,
Yeah, this is another Boris cover.
Yeah, oof.
Fine.
So good.
And let's turn it around. This one, the one annual that they did. And it's been a little while since I read it, but I'm pretty sure this is a reprint of an earlier story. And I'm not exactly sure who did the cover on that.
It's a great one, regardless.
Yeah, it's a good one to have. Those annuals are kind of hard to find. The magazine annuals. They each of the magazines that they had going at the time did one annual, like maybe around 1975, and then you never saw another one. Well, most of those books didn't even last that long. I mean, most magazines they did lasted maybe 2 or 3 years. Savage Sword is like the only one.
The only one that lasted, yeah.
That lasted any length of time. And here we have number 10, another Boris cover. This one, the interior, I remember the story in this one. It's the final chapter of Hour of the Dragon. And Hour of the Dragon ran through the Giant Size series. Giant Size Conan 1 through 4. And they canceled it. They canceled all the Giant Sizes, and they hadn't finished it yet. So they ended up finishing it in Savage Sword, which is kind of weird.
I remember correctly, Hour of the Dragon, I think, was the longest Howard story.
I think you're right about that, yeah. And let's see what else we got here. So there's number 11. I think that's Ken Kelly. Ken Kelly did a lot of illustrations for Warren, for their line of magazines. Number 12.
Oh, yeah.
Great Boris cover.
Yeah, classic. There's a quality about some of these Boris covers that remind me of a lot of those Doc Savage Bantam paperback covers.
Yeah, I think a lot of them do have that sort of thing. That
pulpy feel to them. Yeah.
There you go. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah, that pulp quality. Yeah, or like the Shadow.
Yep, those two. Yep, and the Avenger.
Yeah. Another. I'm not sure exactly who did this cover. There's a name there, but I can't quite make it out.
Yeah, I don't know. I was going to say Frank Warner at first, but it kind of looks like him, but not.
Yeah, some of these guys were kind of one and done. I mean, they might have just done one cover. Now this one, I believe, is the first one. Yeah, I don't think we've done any with him yet. Earl Norham, who probably did more covers than anybody else in this, and he was amazing.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah. And the detail on this one. And I believe this one had a Neil Adams story inside.
Story on the inside, yeah.
There were a couple of them that had Neil Adams in. I wish Neil Adams had done more Conan.
I think most people thought that Neil Adams should have done a lot more of everything. So that one, that's the exactly my volume there. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. And that's another Boris.
Yep.
That might be his last one. I don't think he had any more after this.
Okay.
Yeah, they lost him kind of quick. And he's probably wanting too much money.
Probably.
And another Earl Norham. So they had Earl Norham by this time. So, that kind of took the sting out of losing Vallejo. And
nice.
Is Ernie Chan, who's mostly known for doing the inks on Savage Sword and Conan the Barbarian. And this one, Dan Adkins, and mostly known as a penciler and an inker, but he could crank out a good cover. Look at that.
Yeah, that's pretty beautiful.
Good painting cover.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish he'd done more of that kind of thing. And I'm not sure who this is. It's got a different kind of style to it.
Yeah. Again, it looks familiar.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it looks almost a little Frazetta-ish, but I know it's not him.
That's what I was going to say. I don't think it is him, but it definitely has that kind of flair to it.
Certainly a fan of Mr. Frazetta, I would say.
Well, I would think that most of the guys who worked on this book probably wanted to get that kind of style, right? You figure
Oh,
they know what
absolutely.
works. So it's like, well, we got to come somewhere between Boris and Frazetta. And most of them managed to do that. I mean, that one right there is like a work of genius, that one you got in your hand right there. Look at that.
Yeah, this is another Earl Norham.
Yeah. Oof, look at that. Look at that monster, boy.
Mm.
Hey, Bill, if you're watching, get a load of that, huh?
Does Bill like these?
Oh, yeah.
I'm surprised you guys don't have more.
Yeah. Again,
Well, that might change, right?
you never know. You never know.
Yeah, I think that's
Wow.
Earl Norham.
Yeah.
He was cranking them out around this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he did some covers for some of their other magazines, but I mean, mostly remembered for the Conan covers.
These were bi-monthly, right?
It started as a bi-monthly, but I think by this time, I think one of them is going to say now monthly.
Okay.
But did eventually go monthly. Val Merrick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Who did I think, wasn't he the guy that created Howard the Duck? I know he did Man Thing, and I think when
Steve Gerber
was introduced in Man Thing.
Yeah, because Val Merrick did a lot of the early Man Thing stuff. So yeah, he probably was the first guy who drew Howard the Duck.
Yeah. But man,
that's quite good.
Yeah.
I mean, Val was another one, didn't do a lot of stuff.
No. And this one I love. And I think this is the one. Yeah.
Oh yeah, wow, look at that.
L monthly.
Okay, there you go.
But yeah, Earl Norham, you got Conan, you got Red Sonja, you got a big giant octopus. I mean,
Yep.
What's not to like?
Yep.
How many more of these you want to do?
We'll do about 25 and then we'll wait till next episode.
Well, we're on 24.
Here we go.
So
Oh, beauty.
yeah,
Good
I think
spider.
this is the Tower of the Elephant story,
Gotcha.
which
Classic.
yeah, it is a classic. Oddly enough, it got serialized both in Conan the Barbarian and in Savage Sword.
So how different is it between one and the other?
It's been a little while since I've read them, since I read both of them. So
Yeah, and you know what? Because I have it in my volume.
but there's definitely some differences to it. I think there might have gone into a little more detail with in story wise with the Savage Sword one.
Plus two, between Conan the Barbarian and Savage Sword, you had the two different artists. So we had Barry Smith, who worked on it in Conan the Barbarian. You had Johnny B, who did it in Savage. So there was that. I mean, I'm just looking at it right now in my volume, and there's definitely lots to take in that's a little bit different. So,
Right. And I guess once we're topping at 25, this will be our finale.
cool. Wow, that's a great one too.
This one is Brian Moore. I'm not familiar with him,
Yeah, I'm not either.
but look at that dude. I mean,
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
he-
Plus, I see at the bottom you got the Solomon Kane story in there too. Another great character.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like all that stuff. I call Red Sonja, the whole the bunch of them.
All of it. Some great characters. So cool. So there we have at the end of part one of this two-part episode. So stay tuned for part two on Friday morning, where Scott's going to show us 26 through 50. So that's coming up in a couple of days. So stay tuned for that. And please subscribe if you haven't already. Click on that notification bell so you get alerted of all of our content. Although we are pretty predictable here on Comic Book Geezers. We publish every Wednesday and Friday. So I want to thank Scott for coming on board and joining the Geezer crew and showing off some cool Conan magazines. But don't touch that dial because we're coming back with more from Scott's collection coming up on Friday. So stay tuned, everybody. Thanks for watching. For Scott Berry, I'm Pete Pardo. See you real soon here on Comic Book Geezers. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.